Something I'm definitely ready to change my mind on is the Patriots quarterback situation, Dwain. And this is classic offseason. So let's just paint the picture. All offseason, at least me, I'm not going to say you, but at least me, and I think a lot of other football people that I pay attention to and listen to have just said, man, Jacoby Brissett is the best bridge quarterback you could probably think of. He's played well in chaotic environments. He's played well in clean environments over the last couple of years. Great bridge quarterback. They can just play him, let him take the lumps, and get Drake Maye some experience on the bench, some growth, some development. They don't have to throw him out there to the Wolves early on. And that sounds perfect. Like in an ideal world, right? Guy like Drake Maye, people say he needs to sit. You got a bridge quarterback who can allow him to sit. Great. Perfect. Rosy offseason picture. Then you see these two guys on the field. And like, again, I still like Jacoby Brissett, but I think it's been a rocky road this preseason. And look, that it's preseason. Okay, that's not everything. Like I said, I still like Jacoby Brissett. This is less about him and more about you see Drake Maye out there. And again, preseason, vanilla defenses, the whole thing, whatever. I'm not even going to say it's going to be perfect, and it hasn't been perfect with Drake Maye out there, but he just gives the offense life. And you're suddenly like, why don't we just throw this guy out there and see what happens? So, again, that's sort of my journey with the Patriots quarterback situation. And I think the preseason, Dwain, has sort of moved my opinion on what the Patriots should do with their quarterbacks early in the season, at least.
Yeah, and so, like, from a fantasy perspective, we definitely want Drake Maye on the field. He's the only guy that can honestly uncork anything in this offense right now. Nothing meant towards Jacoby Brissett, but it's looked terrible. Now, the coaching staff, they watch the practice every day, and they continue to say that Jacoby looks like the better player. The problem is your offensive line is terrible. And Jacoby Brissett at this point in his career is a statue. And what we've seen with Drake Maye, even though he may not be able to understand what all of these exotic looks will be once the real season starts, probably more likely just to go out there and throw a pick six right away when he gets some of this stuff mixed with pressure. But he's been able to handle the pressure. He's been able to use his mobility and escapability, if you will, to maneuver in the pocket, buy time to hit big plays down the field. He had another one this weekend that got called back due to penalty. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people didn't even see that play. So he has shown that, and he is good on the ground. So if he does escape the pocket and there's not someone to get the ball to, which let's be honest, it's probably going to be the case a lot with this receiving core this season, he can at least scramble. And he can at least maybe pick you up a first down, and get 6-7 yards and get out of bounds and get you that first. If you look at, his college data, he was behind only Jaden Daniel in design rush attempts and scramble rate in college. So this is a guy that you can use to also at least make the defense have to defend a potential, option play, where he can decide, is he going to keep it or is he going to hand it off up the middle? And I think that anything you can do like that when you've got an offense that honestly is just so weapon starved like the Patriots, I think that's what you need to do. I do understand the sentiment that, is he going to get David Carr? If some of you don't know David Carr, he's Derek Carr's older brother. Fresno State quarterback. He came to the Houston Texans when they were an expansion team, was thought to be one of the best prospects, in a while. And he was the first overall pick, and he got obliterated as a rookie because they were an expansion team. They didn't have an offensive line, they were literally picking over from the leftovers of the rest of the league that people had to expose off their roster. And so maybe there's that concern, but here's my challenge with that, Harmon. You know what's going to happen in New England. Come week 4, they're 0-4. The fans are going to be foaming at the mouth for Drake Maye, and it doesn't matter what your plans were to start this season. You're going to get forced to start him sooner rather than later anyway. So unless you're really going to have the resolve, right, the intestinal fortitude to say, we're not listening to that and we're sitting Drake Maye all season because we don't want him to die, just start him. Just start him out of the gate.
And I believe that in practices, Jacoby Brissett looks better. When we're not really pressuring the quarterback, we're certainly not hitting the quarterback. But then you get against still vanilla, but live defenses in the preseason. And I always come back to the quote that Sigmund Bloom had with Andrew Luck in his rookie season. He always said he looked like a guy that was dropped behind enemy lines and just like, okay, shoot your way out. I do think Drake Maye is going to be dropped in a lot of those behind enemy line situations and having to shoot his way out. The thing is, though, he can do it. Like you see him doing it in the preseason. He can at least do it. It's gonna be a tough fight. There's no question about that. But he can actually get it. He has the tools at least to get it done. And for an offense that is so weapon starved, for an offense that's not going to be able to protect, that's probably going to be in some not advantageous situations because of where they are as a team, I think having a guy like Drake Maye with those tools gives them a little bit of a better shot just to create things on offense that are not going to be there from a play design standpoint, number one, and number two, certainly not from like a player execution standpoint. But before we move on from the Patriots here, I agree with you. Drake Maye would become an interesting fantasy quarterback because of the mobility if he hits the field. But is there anyone else in this receiver room that sort of stands out as like, okay, well, if this offense could be more interesting under Drake Maye, do we care about any of these receivers?
Yeah, I think the ghost of Bill Belichick is still hanging around or something, because we've got KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton still getting the first drive. Who are we kidding? We know who these players are, guys. They're not going to be the guys that are going to carry your offense anyway. You're going to need to let Jalen, and I don't know that Jalen Polk's going to be good, but you need to find out. You need to go ahead and put him on the field. You need to let Javon Baker get out there. Demario Douglas will play the slot. I think he's going to get his targets, right? It's a matter of, can he stay healthy? Can he come up with many touchdowns, long plays? I don't know. I like him fine in a PPR, full PPR. But I really think Polk and Javon Baker, one of those guys, have to step up, because we know what all these other dudes are. They're not good enough to go out and earn targets on their own. They're guys you might be able to scheme up for a little bit, but for the most part, you can't constantly be having to do that to try to get players open. They've got to be able to go out and win some on their own, and at least your young players give you a chance. I will say, on a positive note, Polk rotated in on the second drive, and the starters played the first 6 drives. The offensive line is what I looked at, because Brissett got knocked out in the middle of the second drive.
Yeah, right.
And it was Drake Maye from there. I mean, he got obliterated. It was almost, that's the closest thing I could see to like a clothesline, like in the middle of a WWE match. I mean, and he was on the mat. Gerard Mayo said he could have come back. Like, dude, you're an absolute gladiator, Jacoby Brissett. If you could have come back in a game from that hit, it was brutal. But they got to get the young guys involved. I am interested in your thoughts, like on that. Have you seen anything with Polk or Baker? I've heard of some of what you said, but I'll just give the floor to you on those two guys. And if you were to pick one to potentially emerge maybe in a few weeks, once the season kind of gets rolling and they're finally like, whatever, we're not starting KJ Osborne because that day's coming.
Yeah, it would be Polk. Okay. I think those guys, again, they're in the same tier as prospects to me. I say that a lot, which is Polk went in the right place, I think, in the draft. I think Baker went too late. Now, I think Baker... I've seen people say, again, just casually looking at stuff like, oh, well, this is a bad sign for Javon Baker because he's, Tyquan Thornton's going to start over him. If that's still the case, and by week, 17, 18, whatever, maybe then we can have that conversation.
Is that possible?
You can print out the YouTube thumbnail and eat that if that's the case. Okay. we'll go with that. But yeah, I would be stunned, and then that would maybe be a bad signal for old Javon Baker. But he's definitely someone I'm keeping, kind of another football guy's quote. I'm keeping him on waiver wire speed dial at least with Javon Baker. But
he's the one that could be the straw to stir the drink.
Totally, because he stands out. He
can be a big play guy.
He's one of these things doesn't look like the other, even when we're talking about the rest of the receiver room. So that's why I've been interested in him. That's why I was interested in him both in the draft and then especially when the Patriots took him. But Polk, I do think, is a good player, and I think will have a week 1 role and probably a bigger and bigger role by week 3, week 4, week 5, etc. He's somebody I've been willing to take late in drafts. I don't really take Baker, at least in a typical redraft league, but again, waiver wire speed dial.
He's waiver wire.